My husband told me he fell out of love when he saw me have a panic attack. He said watching me fall apart like that made him lose respect for me. This happened after I'd been in a car accident, minor one, but the sound of screeching tires triggered something in me at a red light 2 weeks later. My breathing got shallow, my hands went numb, and I had to pull over. He was in the passenger seat. I remember him staring at me like I'd become a stranger. "You need to get it together," he said flatly. That night, he slept on the couch. The next morning, he told me he couldn't see me the same way anymore. A panic attack, something I had zero control over, had apparently made me weak in his eyes, unworthy of respect. For the next 4 months, he became distant, stopped touching me, stopped asking about my day. I tried therapy, medication, everything to fix myself so he'd come back. He moved into the guest room permanently. Then one Sunday, I went to drop off his dry cleaning and found a receipt in his jacket pocket. Dinner for 2 at the restaurant where we had our first date. Dated from last Tuesday when he said he was working late. I checked our credit card statements. Dozens of charges I didn't recognize, hotels, jewelry I'd never received, lingerie in sizes that weren't mine. When I confronted him, he didn't even try to deny it. "I met her at the gym," he said calmly. "She's strong, confident, everything you're not." Turns out, he'd been seeing her for 6 months. Started 2 months before my panic attack. The panic attack was just his convenient excuse to justify what he'd already been doing. He moved out that weekend, filed for divorce within days. His lawyer was aggressive, demanding I pay him alimony since I made more as a corporate attorney, wanted half of everything, including my inheritance from my grandmother. During the asset division hearing, his lawyer painted me as an unstable workaholic who'd neglected her husband. They brought up the panic attack, my therapy sessions, the medication, made me sound like I was falling apart. Meanwhile, he sat there looking composed and reasonable. The betrayed husband who'd stayed as long as he could. What his lawyer didn't know was that I'd hired a private investigator 8 weeks earlier. I had photos, texts, receipts going back nearly a year. Proof that his affair started long before my panic attack. Proof that he'd been draining our joint savings to fund his double life. When my lawyer submitted the evidence, the courtroom went silent. There were pictures of him and his girlfriend on vacation in Hawaii, while he told me he was at a work conference. Hotel records showing he'd been meeting her twice a week. Credit card statements revealing he'd bought her a $8,000 necklace using money from our account. Text messages where he described me as his ball and chain and discussed how to maximize what he could take in the divorce. The judge was not pleased. Denied his alimony request, split assets based on what each person had actually contributed. My lawyer then brought up one final piece of evidence. Turns out his girlfriend was also married. Her husband had no idea. My lawyer had tracked him down and he was very interested in this information. As we left the courthouse, I watched my ex-husband's face drain of color when he saw his girlfriend's husband waiting in the parking lot. That man was holding a folder labeled countersuit and looked absolutely furious. His wife's betrayal was about to cost them both everything. My ex tried calling me that night. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail saying we should talk, that things had gotten out of hand, that maybe we could work something out. But I was done being the weak one, the one who fell apart. 2 days later, his girlfriend's husband filed for divorce and named my ex specifically in the paperwork. He's being sued for alienation of affection, which is still legal in our state. My lawyer called to tell me the lawsuit is requesting $250,000 in damages. Now, my ex is facing 2 divorces and a massive lawsuit, all because he mistook my vulnerability for weakness. Last week, I got a text from an unknown number, just 4 words that made my blood run cold. The text read, "We need to talk." No signature, no context, just those 4 words. I stared at my phone for 10 minutes trying to figure out who sent it. A second text came through before I could respond. "It's about your husband. Meet me at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at noon. Come alone." I showed the text to my lawyer. She advised against going. Could be a trap, she said. Could be someone trying to intimidate me. But curiosity got the better of me. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, sat in a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance, and waited. At exactly noon, a woman in her mid-30s walked in. She was scanning the room, clearly looking for someone. Our eyes met and she headed straight for my table. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I'm Vanessa. I was married to your ex-husband before you." My stomach dropped. He told me he'd been married once, briefly, in his early 20s. Said it was a mistake that ended amicably. Looking at Vanessa, I could tell there was nothing amicable about their story. "He told me you had a panic attack and that's why he left," she said, without preamble. "That's what he does. He finds something vulnerable about you and uses it as his excuse when he's ready to move on." She opened her purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "I've been following your case. When I saw his name in the legal filings, I knew I had to reach out." Inside the envelope were medical records, police reports, and dozens of photographs. Vanessa had been diagnosed with postpartum depression after their daughter was born. Her ex, my ex, had used her diagnosis to paint her as an unfit mother. He'd filed for divorce and sole custody while she was still in treatment. "He told everyone I was crazy," she said, her voice tight. "Convinced the judge I was a danger to our daughter. I lost custody for 2 years." She showed me text messages he'd sent her during that time. Cruel, calculated messages designed to provoke her, to make her seem unstable. He documented every emotional response, every tearful phone call, and used it against her in court. By the time I got better and could fight back, he'd already moved on to someone else. You, I'm assuming. I felt sick. The pattern was clear. Find a woman, wait for a moment of weakness or vulnerability, then exploit it for maximum gain. "He's done this before," I said slowly, "multiple times." Vanessa nodded. "I know of at least 2 others besides us and his current girlfriend. I've been quietly gathering information for years, waiting for the right moment." She pulled out more documents, financial records showing how he'd done the same thing to his first wife before Vanessa. taken money, hidden assets, then claimed she was the unstable one. There was even a statement from his college girlfriend who'd had a mental breakdown during finals. He'd spread rumors about her being suicidal, then left her when she was at her lowest. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. Vanessa's expression hardened. "Because this time, we can actually stop him. His girlfriend's husband is suing for alienation of affection. That opens discovery. Every text, every email, every transaction can be subpoenaed. And I have evidence that he's been committing fraud for years, hiding income, lying on tax returns, falsifying documents." She'd been working with a forensic accountant who'd found offshore accounts, shell companies, and paper trails showing systematic financial deception. "If we coordinate with the girlfriend's husband's legal team, we can expose everything. Not just ruin him financially, but potentially get him charged criminally." I called my lawyer immediately. Set up a meeting for that afternoon with Vanessa and her documentation. My lawyer's eyes got wider with every page she reviewed. "This is substantial," she said finally. "If even half of this is admissible, he's looking at serious consequences. Tax fraud alone could mean prison time." We contacted the girlfriend's husband's attorney. Turns out he'd been finding his own irregularities. His wife, my ex's girlfriend, had been receiving mysterious cash deposits, money that couldn't be traced to legitimate sources. When we combined our evidence, a picture emerged of a man who'd been running a sophisticated scheme for over 15 years. The girlfriend's husband, his name was Patrick, joined our meeting the next day. "She told me she'd been getting bonuses from work," he said bitterly. "Turns out your ex-husband was funding her lifestyle with money he'd hidden from you, from his previous wives, from everyone." Patrick had hired his own investigator who'd discovered my ex had been embezzling from his employer for years. Small amounts, carefully hidden, but it added up to over $400,000. Patrick was a software engineer with a calm demeanor that hid a sharp analytical mind. He'd built spreadsheets tracking every suspicious transaction, color-coded timelines showing when money disappeared from various accounts and reappeared elsewhere. "I'm good with patterns," he said, pulling up files on his laptop. "And this pattern is unmistakable." He showed us how my ex had created fake consulting companies, billed his employer for services never rendered. The money would flow through shell corporations, get cleaned through a series of transfers, then emerge as untraceable cash. "He's been doing this since at least 2009, Patrick said. "Probably longer. I just can't find records going back further than that." Vanessa had brought her daughter to the meeting. She was 16 now, quiet and observant. "I remember him," she said suddenly. "He used to lock himself in his office for hours. Mom would knock, and he'd yell at her to leave him alone. I was only 6, but I remember thinking he seemed angry all the time. He was managing his schemes," Vanessa said. "All those late nights he claimed were work, all those locked doors and password-protected files. He was hiding money and planning his next move." She turned to her daughter. "Tell them what you told me last week." The girl, her name was Isabel, looked uncomfortable, but spoke up. "I found a notebook in the attic when we moved. It had Mom's name in it, and a list of things about her, her triggers, her insecurities, things he could use against her. There were other women's names too, 4 of them, with lists next to each name." My blood went cold. "Do you still have this notebook?" Isabel nodded and pulled it from her backpack. The pages were filled with his handwriting, detailed observations about his targets, what made them vulnerable, how to exploit their weaknesses, when to strike for maximum financial gain. My name was there, with notes about my panic attacks, my career, my inheritance. Subject to anxiety, can be pushed into depending on therapy, talk medication, high earning potential, family money accessible through grandmother's trust, timeline, 18 to 24 months before exit. He'd planned everything. The affair started exactly when his notes said it would. The divorce filed within his projected timeline. Even the accusations about my mental state matched his strategy notes. "This is sociopathic," my lawyer said, photographing every page. "This isn't just fraud. This is premeditated psychological manipulation for financial gain." We spent the next 6 hours going through everything, cross-referencing Vanessa's evidence with Patrick's findings with Isabel's notebook. By the time we finished, we had documentation of fraud spanning 16 years, targeting at least 5 women, involving over $600,000 in stolen or hidden assets. "We need to go to the FBI," my lawyer said. "This crosses state lines. Multiple victims. Organized fraud. This is federal." The FBI agent assigned to our case was a woman named Special Agent Morrison. She'd worked financial crimes for 12 years, listened to our presentation without interrupting. When we finished, she leaned back in her chair and said, "I've seen a lot of con artists. This is one of the more sophisticated domestic operations I've encountered." She explained that what my ex had done fell under several federal statutes: wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. "The alienation of affection lawsuit opened the door," she said. "But this is much bigger than we initially thought. We're going to need detailed statements from everyone. And we'll need to move fast before he realizes we're on to him." The investigation moved quickly. Federal agents executed search warrants on my ex's apartment, his office, his car. They seized computers, phones, filing cabinets full of documents. His employer was cooperative once they understood the scope of the embezzlement, provided access to their entire financial system. My ex was arrested at work. Patrick sent me a video someone had filmed on their phone. Federal agents walking him out in handcuffs while his coworkers watched. He looked confused at first, then terrified when he saw the FBI jackets. The video went viral in our professional community. By that evening, everyone knew. His girlfriend tried to claim ignorance, said she had no idea where the money came from. But investigators found text messages where they discussed his business ventures and how to avoid detection. She'd helped him set up shell companies, signed documents creating fake consulting firms. She was arrested 2 days after him. The preliminary hearing was surreal, watching him sit at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his lawyer trying to argue for bail. the prosecutor presenting evidence of flight risk and multiple victims across state lines. The judge denied bail. Mr. Caldwell has demonstrated a pattern of deception spanning over a decade, she said. He poses a significant flight risk and danger to the financial security of others. Remanded into custody pending trial. While he sat in jail awaiting trial, more victims came forward. His college girlfriend, now a therapist, gave a statement about how he'd isolated her from friends and family during her breakdown, made her dependent on him, then left her with massive medical debt when he disappeared. He told me he'd pay for my treatment, she said in her deposition. Then he emptied our joint account and moved across the country. I almost didn't survive that year. His first wife before Vanessa finally spoke up too. She'd been too ashamed before. He'd gotten her pregnant at 19, married her, then systematically drained her family's money through fake investment opportunities. When she discovered she'd had a miscarriage and confronted him about the money, he filed for divorce and disappeared. I lost the baby and my family's life savings in the same month, she testified. My parents had to refinance their house because of him. The prosecution built a timeline showing his progression, each relationship lasting 18 months to 2 years, each one ending when he'd extracted maximum financial benefit. Each exit strategy involving weaponizing his victim's vulnerability. The notebook Isabel found became key evidence, proof of premeditation and intent. Vanessa and I attended every hearing together. Patrick joined when he could. We became a strange support group, bonded by betrayal, but also by survival. He thought we'd stay silent, Vanessa said one day outside the courthouse. He thought shame would keep us isolated. That's where he miscalculated. The girlfriend took a plea deal, agreed to testify against my ex in exchange for reduced charges. Her testimony was damning. She described how he'd coached her on what to say in court during my divorce, how he'd explained his strategy for making me look unstable. He said women like her are easy targets, she told the jury. Professional, financially successful, but with some kind of weakness he could exploit. He called it his sweet spot. She explained how the affairs were never about love or attraction. They were business arrangements. He'd target married women with assets, use them to hide money while preparing to leave his current wife. He told me I was different, she said, crying on the stand, that we'd be together forever. Then I found out he was already starting the same pattern with someone new. The someone new was a junior partner at his firm. He'd been laying groundwork with her even while fighting the divorce and lawsuit, had already started the process of identifying her vulnerabilities, earning her trust. The FBI had found early-stage planning documents on his computer. She testified about how he'd seemed so understanding when she mentioned her history of eating disorders, how he'd offered support and made her feel safe. That's his method, Special Agent Morrison explained during a break. Find the wound, offer the bandage, then rip it off when it serves him. Classic predatory behavior. The trial lasted 5 weeks. The prosecution called 18 witnesses, presented over 2,000 documents, showed bank transfers, emails, text messages, the notebook, medical records, psychological evaluations, built an irrefutable case that this wasn't a man who made mistakes. This was a man who'd spent 16 years systematically destroying women for profit. His defense tried to claim this was all a misunderstanding, that he'd made some poor financial decisions but wasn't a criminal, that his relationships had simply ended badly, and we were all vindictive ex-partners. But they couldn't explain the notebook, couldn't justify the hidden accounts, couldn't account for the money. On the 4th week, they surprised everyone by having him take the stand. It was a disaster. The prosecutor tore him apart, asked him to explain specific entries in his notebook. He claimed it was just personal observations. She asked why he'd written, timeline, 18 to 24 months before exit, next to my name if he'd loved me. He couldn't answer. She walked him through each relationship, each pattern, each victim, made him read his own words aloud. Subject displays weakness in social situations, can be isolated from support system. He tried to claim these were just private thoughts. She asked how private thoughts justified stealing $600,000. The jury looked disgusted. His mother attended every day of the trial, sat in the back row crying. During a recess, she approached me. I knew something was wrong, she said. I knew and I didn't stop it. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say to her. She'd raised a predator, but she was also watching her son's life implode. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, found him guilty on all 31 counts: wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, theft. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 months later. He was led back to jail while his mother sobbed in the gallery. Those 2 months were strange. There was relief, validation that we'd been right, that he was guilty, that we weren't crazy or vindictive, but also exhaustion. The trial had drained all of us. Vanessa took time off work to process. Patrick focused on rebuilding his life with his kids. I threw myself into my job, working 80-hour weeks to avoid thinking about everything. The sentencing hearing filled the courtroom. All of his victims were there. His first wife spoke about losing her family's savings. His college girlfriend described the trauma of being abandoned during a mental health crisis. Vanessa talked about missing 2 years of her daughter's life because of his lies. Patrick explained how his children had suffered watching their mother's betrayal unfold publicly. I spoke last, talked about the panic attack, how he'd used my most vulnerable moment as a weapon, how he'd made me question my own reality. You didn't just steal money, I said, looking directly at him. You stole pieces of our souls. You made us doubt ourselves, our judgment, our worth. But standing here today, I realize you failed. We survived. We rebuilt. We're stronger than you ever gave us credit for. The judge had clearly read everything. She spent 20 minutes detailing his crimes, the pattern of abuse, the calculated nature of his actions. Mr. Caldwell, you treated human beings as resources to be exploited. You weaponized vulnerability. You turned relationships into business transactions. This court has rarely seen such systematic, premeditated cruelty. She sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison, full restitution to all victims, permanent seizure of all remaining assets, lifetime ban on holding financial positions. I hope you use this time to reflect on the pain you've caused, she said. Though I suspect you lack the capacity for such reflection. He was let out. Didn't look at any of us. His mother tried to reach for him, but the marshals were moving too quickly. The courtroom erupted in quiet conversations. Vanessa hugged me. Patrick shook my lawyer's hand. We'd won. It felt strange. Victory, but also emptiness. Years of our lives we'd never get back. The girlfriend served 18 months in a minimum security facility, lost her nursing license, got divorced. Last I heard, she was working retail and living with her mother. Patrick got full custody of their kids. They're doing well. Therapy helped. He started dating again last year. Someone kind who understands what he went through. Vanessa's daughter, Isabel, graduated high school with honors, full scholarship to a state university. She's studying psychology now. Wants to help people recognize manipulative relationships before they get too deep. I saw what he did to my mom, she told me at her graduation party. I'm going to make sure other people see it too. Vanessa herself went back to school for a degree in social work. Now she runs a support group for women leaving financially abusive relationships. I spent years being ashamed, she said during one of our coffee meetings. Now I'm using that experience to help others. That's the best revenge. The restitution money came slowly. Federal seizures take time. But eventually, checks started arriving. They'd found accounts in the Cayman Islands, safety deposit boxes full of cash, property he'd purchased under fake names. All of it was liquidated and distributed to his victims based on what we'd lost. I got back the money he'd stolen, plus compensation for legal fees and damages. Used part of it to fund a scholarship for women returning to college after abusive relationships. Named it after my grandmother, whose inheritance he'd tried to steal. She would have liked that. My panic attacks decreased with therapy and time. Found a new therapist who specialized in trauma from psychological abuse. She helped me understand that my body's response to stress wasn't weakness. It was a normal reaction to being gaslit and manipulated for years. Your nervous system was protecting you, she explained. It knew something was wrong before your conscious mind accepted it. I started dating again 2 years after the trial, cautiously at first. Coffee dates where I could leave easily if needed. Learned to trust my instincts again. Learned that not every kind gesture had an ulterior motive, that some people were actually just kind. That's how I met Felix. He was a high school teacher who volunteered at a literacy program. Gentle, patient, completely transparent about his life. No locked phones or mysterious late nights. No hidden accounts or secret meetings. Just a genuinely decent person who'd also been through a difficult divorce and understood the importance of honest communication. On our second date, I told him everything. Expected him to run. Instead, he listened quietly and said, "Thank you for trusting me with that. It must have taken enormous strength to survive what you went through. Not pity, not horror, just respect. We've been together for a year now. Last month we were driving and heard tires screech behind us. I felt the panic start, the familiar tightness in my chest. Felix noticed immediately. Pull over whenever you need to," he said calmly. No judgment, no frustration, just support. I pulled into a parking lot, did my breathing exercises, let the wave pass. When I was ready, Felix asked if I wanted to talk about it or sit quietly. Sitting quietly is good, I said. We sat there for 30 minutes, not because I needed to, because he wanted to make sure I was genuinely okay. That's what respect actually looks like. Not demanding perfection, not running at the first sign of struggle, not using vulnerability as ammunition, just being present, just caring enough to stay. My ex-husband is 4 years into his sentence now. Eligible for parole in 11 years if he maintains good behavior. I heard through mutual contacts that he's working in the prison library. Supposedly found religion, claims he's a changed man. I don't believe it. Men like that don't change. They just get better at hiding. His mother writes to me occasionally, apologizing, asking if I found it in my heart to forgive him. I never respond. Forgiveness isn't something I owe him. It's not something he earned. He's serving his sentence. That's all the closure I need. Vanessa and I still meet monthly for dinner. Our daughters are friends now. Isabel is thriving in college. My younger sister, who watched me go through the divorce and trial, just finished law school, specializing in family law. I watched what you went through, she told me. I want to help other women navigate these systems. Patrick remarried last year. His new wife is a kindergarten teacher he met through his kids' school. They're happy. His children were in the wedding. Life moves forward. I got promoted at work, made senior partner, the same firm where my ex used to claim I neglected him for my career. Turns out I was never the problem. I was just married to someone who couldn't handle my success, who needed me small so he could feel big. The panic attacks are rare now, maybe once every few months. I've learned my triggers, learned how to manage them, learned that having them doesn't make me weak or broken. It makes me human. It makes me someone who survived something traumatic and came out stronger. Last week, I gave a speech at a women's legal conference, talked about financial abuse and psychological manipulation in relationships, how to recognize the signs, how to protect yourself legally, how to survive and rebuild. The room was packed, women taking notes, asking questions, sharing their own stories. After the speech, a young lawyer approached me. She was crying. "My boyfriend keeps notes about me," she whispered. "Things I'm insecure about. I thought I was paranoid for being bothered by it. I gave her my card, told her to call me anytime, connected her with Vanessa's support group, watched her walk away, looking determined instead of afraid. That's the thing about surviving. You don't just heal yourself. You become a resource for others, a lighthouse showing there's a way through the storm. That vulnerability isn't weakness. That breaking doesn't mean you're broken, that you can fall apart and still get back up, stronger, wiser, more determined to never let anyone make you doubt yourself again. My ex-husband tried to destroy me by exploiting a panic attack. Instead, he destroyed himself and gave me the motivation to become someone who helps others recognize predators before they strike. He wanted me weak. He made me steal. That's the real justice. Not the prison sentence, not the restitution, but the fact that his worst act of cruelty became the foundation for my greatest strength. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure other women know they can survive too. 5 years into his sentence, something unexpected happened. I received a letter forwarded through the prison system, not from him directly, but from a prison counselor. My ex-husband had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, stage 4, 6 months to live, maybe less. The counselor was reaching out because he'd requested to speak with me, said he needed to make amends before he died. I stared at that letter for a long time. Part of me felt nothing. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction. But mostly, I felt tired. Tired of him taking up space in my mind. Tired of the story not being over. I showed the letter to my therapist. "Do you want to see him?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wants to refuse. Let him die with that regret. But another part wonders if I need that closure. I talked to Vanessa about it. She'd received the same letter. "I'm not going," she said immediately. "He had years to make amends. Now that he's dying, he wants absolution. That's not my responsibility." She was right. It wasn't our responsibility. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Felix and I discussed it for hours. "Whatever you decide, I support you," he said. "But make sure you're doing it for yourself, not for him. If you go because you need to, not because you feel obligated." I thought about what I needed. Did I need to see him broken and dying? Did I need to hear him apologize? Did I need to tell him exactly what he'd done to me? I decided to go. Not for him, for me. To look at the man who'd tried to destroy me and see him as what he really was. Just a man, mortal, fallible, powerless now. I arranged the visit through the prison, brought Felix with me. Vanessa thought I was crazy, but respected my decision. "Just don't let him manipulate you one last time," she warned. The prison was a 2-hour drive. Gray concrete walls and barbed wire fences. Security processing took another hour. Finally, I was led to a visitation room. Not the regular one with phones and glass partitions. A private room because he was in the prison medical ward. Felix waited in the lobby. He was brought in on a wheelchair. I barely recognized him. The cancer had ravaged his body. He'd lost probably 70 pounds. His skin had a yellow tinge. His hands shook. But his eyes were the same, still calculating, still searching for angles. Even dying, he was looking for leverage. "Thank you for coming," he said. His voice was weak but steady. "I wasn't sure you would." I sat across from him and said nothing. Let the silence stretch. Finally, he continued. "I'm dying. They're giving me 4 months, maybe 6. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my life, about the things I've done, and," I said flatly. He looked surprised. Maybe he expected me to be sympathetic, to soften at the sight of him dying. "I need to apologize," he said, "for everything. I was wrong. I hurt you. I hurt a lot of people. I want you to know I'm sorry." I watched him carefully, looking for signs of genuine remorse. All I saw was a man afraid of dying with a guilty conscience. "You're sorry," I repeated, "because you're dying, not because of what you did. You're sorry because you're scared of what comes next." His face tightened. There it was, that flash of anger, the real him underneath the dying man routine. "I'm trying to make this right," he said. "I thought you'd appreciate the gesture." And there it was. Even now, he thought he was doing me a favor, that his apology was a gift I should be grateful for. "Let me tell you what I appreciate," I said, leaning forward. "I appreciate that you're dying in prison. I appreciate that you'll never hurt another woman. I appreciate that your legacy is pain and crime and consequences. That's what I appreciate." He looked shocked, like I'd slapped him. "I reached out to you because I thought you were better than this," he said. "I thought you'd have compassion." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You want compassion? You destroyed 5 women's lives, stole hundreds of thousands of dollars, manipulated, lied, and gaslit anyone who trusted you. And now you want compassion? I'm dying," he said, as if that changed anything. "Everyone dies," I replied. "Most people just manage to do it without destroying everyone around them first. You want forgiveness? You want me to tell you it's okay? It's not okay. It will never be okay. You don't get absolution just because you're scared." The guard at the door shifted uncomfortably. My ex-husband's hands were shaking more now. From illness or anger, I couldn't tell. "I made mistakes," he said. "I know that. But I was in pain too. My childhood, my father, the pressure I was under." "Stop," I cut him off. "Everyone has pain. Everyone has trauma. Most people don't weaponize it against others. You had choices. Every single time you chose cruelty. You chose manipulation. You chose yourself over everyone else. That wasn't pain. That was who you are." Tears started running down his face. Real ones, I thought. Maybe the first genuine emotion I'd ever seen from him. "I don't want to die like this," he whispered. "Hated. Alone. With everyone celebrating that I'm gone." "Then you should have lived differently," I said simply. "You built this life. You made these choices. Every woman you hurt gave you a chance, loved you, trusted you. You took that trust and turned it into a weapon. This is what you earned." He was sobbing now. The guard looked like he wanted to intervene. I stood up. "I came here because I needed to see you one last time. Not for you, for me. I needed to look at the man who tried to break me and realize you're just human. Just a sad, dying man who wasted his whole life on schemes and lies. You're not powerful. You never were. You were just good at finding people's weaknesses. Well, you don't have that power anymore." I walked to the door, then turned back. I hope your last months are filled with clarity. I hope you think about every woman you hurt, every life you damaged, every person who trusted you. I hope you die with all of that weighing on you, because that's justice, not forgiveness, justice. I left him crying in that room, didn't look back. Felix was waiting in the lobby, took one look at my face and wrapped me in a hug. How do you feel? He asked as we walked to the car. Free, I said, and I meant it. Seeing him powerless, dying, reduced to begging for forgiveness he didn't deserve, it broke whatever remaining hold he had on me. He died 6 weeks later. His mother called to tell me, said he'd asked for me again at the end. I didn't attend the funeral. Neither did Vanessa or Patrick or any of his victims. His mother and a handful of distant relatives buried him. I spent that day at the beach with Felix, swimming in the ocean, feeling alive and strong and grateful for every choice that had brought me to that moment. His death made the news. Small article in the business section. Former executive dies in prison after fraud conviction. No mention of the women he'd destroyed. No mention of the lives he'd ruined. Just a brief summary of his crimes and his sentence. That's all he amounted to in the end. A cautionary tale. A statistic. Vanessa and I met for dinner the night after his funeral. How do you feel? She asked. Surprisingly okay, I said. I thought I'd feel something more. Satisfaction, maybe? Or relief? But mostly I just feel indifferent. Like a chapter I've already finished finally had its last page. He wanted to die forgiven, Vanessa said. He wanted us to absolve him so he could feel like a good person. She shook her head. But that's not how it works. You don't get to hurt people for decades and then apologize at the end and have it all erased. We raised our glasses. Not to his death, but to our survival. To the lives we'd built despite him. To the women we'd helped. To the strength we'd found in each other. He tried to break us, I said. And instead, we broke his entire life apart. Vanessa smiled. Best revenge is living well. 6 months after his death, I got a package in the mail. From his attorney. Inside was a letter he'd written before he died. One last attempt to control the narrative. I almost threw it away without reading, but curiosity won. The letter was long, rambling, full of justifications and excuses and self-pity. He talked about his father's abuse, his mother's neglect, the pressure to succeed, the fear of failure. He claimed he'd never meant to hurt anyone, that things had just spiraled out of control, that he'd been trying to survive in a world that valued success above all else, that society had made him into the monster he became. Pages and pages of blame-shifting and rationalization, not a single genuine admission of responsibility. At the end, he wrote, I hope someday you'll understand that I was more than the worst things I did, that there was good in me too, that I loved you, in my way, that I'm sorry it ended like this. I read that last paragraph twice, then I burned the letter, watched it curl and blacken in my fireplace, turned it to ash. He was wrong. He wasn't more than the worst things he did. Those things were exactly who he was. The manipulation, the lies, the cruelty, that was his truth. Everything else was just the mask he wore. And I didn't need to understand him. Understanding wasn't the same as excusing. You can understand why someone becomes a monster and still hold them accountable for their monstrous acts. Felix found me sitting by the fireplace, watching the ashes. Was it bad? He asked. It was pathetic, I said. One last attempt to make himself the victim. To rewrite history so he was just a misunderstood man who made mistakes. Felix sat beside me. You know the truth. That's all that matters. I thought about truth a lot after that. How my ex had spent his entire life running from it. Creating false narratives. Building elaborate lies. Manipulating reality to serve his purposes. And in the end, truth caught up with him anyway. Found him in a prison cell. Followed him to his grave. Truth was patient. Unforgiving. Inevitable. My career continued to flourish. The scholarship I'd founded helped 12 women return to school that first year. 18 the next year. By the third year, we'd expanded to 4 states. Each recipient had to write an essay about overcoming financial abuse. Reading those essays was heartbreaking and inspiring in equal measure. So many women with similar stories. So many predators using the same tactics. I started speaking more publicly. Not just at legal conferences, but at universities, women's shelters, corporate events, talking about red flags, about protection strategies, about the importance of financial independence, about recognizing manipulation before it destroys you. The more I spoke, the more women reached out, sharing their stories, asking for advice, thanking me for giving them language for their experiences. One woman wrote to me about her husband who kept a notebook about her moods. Another described how her partner had convinced her she was too mentally unstable to handle money. Another explained how she'd been gaslit about her panic disorder until she questioned her own reality. The patterns were everywhere once you knew to look for them. Vanessa and I collaborated on a book, part memoir, part guide, part warning. We called it Weaponized Vulnerability: How Predators Use Your Strengths Against You. It detailed our experiences, the legal battle, the recovery process, but more importantly, it provided a framework for identifying and escaping financial and emotional abuse. The book sold moderately well, but the impact was in the letters we received. Women who recognized their situations, who got out before it was too late, who felt less alone. Isabel graduated college and started graduate school in clinical psychology. She's specializing in trauma and manipulation. I want to understand the psychology of predators, she told me, so I can help people recognize them faster. She's brilliant. Already published 2 papers on coercive control in intimate relationships. Her mother's pride is palpable every time she talks about her. Patrick's kids are teenagers now, thriving. His son made varsity soccer. His daughter is in advanced placement classes. They see their mother occasionally. Supervised visits. She completed her sentence and probation, works as a cashier, lives in a small apartment. From what Patrick says, she's genuinely remorseful. But that doesn't undo the damage. His kids are polite to her, but distant. Some things can't be repaired. My relationship with Felix deepened. We moved in together after 2 years. He proposed last spring. Simple proposal. No elaborate setup. Just the two of us hiking in the mountains. He stopped at a viewpoint, took my hand, and said, "I want to spend my life being the person you can count on. Will you marry me?" I said yes immediately. We're planning a small wedding, just close friends and family. Vanessa and Isabel will be there. Patrick and his kids. My sister, Felix's parents. People who've supported us through difficult times. People who understand that happiness is earned through survival and choice and commitment, not through manipulation or control or games. I still have panic attacks occasionally, less frequently now, but they happen. Felix has learned my signs, knows when I need space and when I need presence. Never makes me feel broken or weak, just human, just someone he loves who carries scars from battles he wishes I'd never had to fight. Last month, I got an email from the junior partner my ex had been targeting before his arrest. She's now a senior partner at her firm, married to a kind man who supports her recovery from her eating disorder. She thanked me for stopping my ex before he could fully execute his plan on her. "You saved my life," she wrote. I was starting to trust him, starting to let him in. If he hadn't been arrested when he was, I would have been victim number 6. That's the part that haunts me sometimes. Not what happened to me, but what almost happened to her, and countless others. How many more women would he have destroyed if we hadn't stopped him? The FBI estimated he'd have continued the pattern indefinitely. New victims every 18 to 24 months, each one carefully selected and systematically destroyed. A lifetime of devastation that ended only because we fought back. I framed one of his text messages, the one where he called me weak for having a panic attack. It hangs in my home office, not as a reminder of pain, but as a reminder of strength. That moment he thought was my weakness became the catalyst for his destruction. He mistook vulnerability for fragility, thought compassion was the same as cowardice, believed that because I felt things deeply, I couldn't fight fiercely. He was wrong about all of it. The scholarship fund has grown, corporate sponsors came on board. We've helped over 100 women now. Each one represents a life reclaimed, a future rebuilt, a cycle broken. Some of them have reached out years later to tell me they've graduated, started businesses, left abusive situations, helped others. The ripple effect of one act of resistance against one predator. Vanessa's support group expanded to 6 locations. She trained facilitators in each city, developed curriculum, created resources. What started as informal meetings in her living room became a registered nonprofit. They helped over 300 women last year alone, provided legal referrals, financial counseling, therapy connections, safe housing assistance, practical help for people trying to escape what we escaped. My ex-husband is buried in a cemetery an hour from here. His mother maintains the grave, puts flowers on it weekly. I've never visited. Don't plan to. His grave is just a marker for a life wasted on cruelty. I have no need to pay respects to someone who never respected anyone. His memory lives only in the cautionary tales we tell, and the warning signs we teach others to recognize. Sometimes I wonder what he thought about in his final days. Did he genuinely feel remorse? Or was he just afraid of dying unloved? Did he understand what he'd done? Or did he still see himself as the victim of circumstances? I'll never know. And I've made peace with not knowing. His internal world is no longer my concern. What I do know is this. He tried to make my panic attack define me, tried to turn my moment of human vulnerability into a life sentence of shame and weakness. Instead, I turned his cruelty into a career of helping others, his manipulation into a mission of exposure, his crimes into a campaign for justice. He spent his life taking from others. I've spent mine giving back. That's the difference between us, between predators and survivors. They see weakness as something to exploit. We see it as something to protect. They use vulnerability as a weapon. We use it as a bridge to connect with others. They build empires on lies. We build communities on truth. In the end, their empires always crumble. Our communities endure. My husband, my ex-husband, died bitter and alone in a prison medical ward. His legacy is pain and caution. I'm alive, engaged to a good man, helping others, building a life worth living. My legacy will be the women I've helped, and the systems I've exposed and the strength I've shared. When I'm gone, I want people to remember that I fell apart once, and that I used that moment of falling apart as the foundation to build something unbreakable. That's not weakness. That never was. That was always strength. He just couldn't see it. And that blindness cost him everything.